Chlöe Swarbrick.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. To the Prime Minister, does he stand by his government's statements and actions?
Yes, and especially the steps that we are taking to get on top of inflation. From the moment we got into government, we moved fast to get on top of the cost of living, reining in wasteful spending, slashing through the red tape and taking costs off businesses. That is good news because our plan is starting to work. Inflation is down to 3.3%, the lowest in 3 years, and more good news is personal income tax relief is coming next week. For the first time in 14 years, as we campaigned on, letting Kiwis, hard-working Kiwis, the people that the Greens and Labor used to care about, keep more of their own money.
Supplementary. Is the Prime Minister proud that under his government's draft emissions reduction plan, that in less than a year in office, he's taken us off track to meet climate targets in 2035 and carbon neutrality by 2050?
Well, what I am proud about is our commitment to delivering on net zero 2050. For that to happen, we need to balance the emissions budgets each and every time. Emissions budget number 1 is being delivered. Emissions budget number 2 is being delivered. Emissions budget number 3 will be delivered. But we have time for that to happen. And the draft plan is out there. I encourage people to submit on it.
Can the Prime Minister explain what least cost means in the context of the emissions reduction plan?
Oh my goodness. We are wanting to make sure that we lower our emissions across New Zealand. And we are going to do everything we can to do that. What we are doing is doubling the amount of renewable energy to make sure that we can get things built faster. And I just encourage the Greens. I would love it if the Greens come out and actually cared about emissions and actually support our fast-track legislation so we can double the amount of renewable electricity in this country and lower our emissions in the process. Please, please join us.
Supplementary question, the Honourable David Seymour.
Is reducing emissions at least cost a great improvement on past policies where government sought to reduce carbon emissions at a cost many times greater than the ETS price, or in other words, chose to take less carbon dioxide out of the air than they could have if they took a least cost approach?
I think reducing a tonne of carbon at the least cost is a good idea.
How exactly does the government's strategy for credible markets supporting the climate transition align with the government's budget decisions to shred funding for the emissions trading scheme and the recent failure of the ETS auction?
I'll just say to the member, the member may not understand, but what we are trying to do is to make sure that we deliver on our climate emissions targets and goals. The way in which we go about it may be different from the previous administration, but we're going to do it our way to deliver those commitments.